Welcome to the show. I'm Danella, and here's what's happening now. Children can show you a reflection of who you really are. I'm going to tell you how, and I'm going to tell you the not so nice thing I learned about myself by watching my child. Also, I don't know if you noticed, I got a new hairstyle. Man, I'm trying to beat the heat. And speaking of heat, Obama is heated at this new healthcare bill. We're going to get into that. But before we do, we're going to kick off the show by paying respect to Prodigy. Now, I was fortunate enough to have Prodigy on one of my earlier shows, and fortunate enough to be able to interview him a couple of times. And I want to share this story with you. The first time I interviewed him, and he's a dynamic person. I mean, a rapper, an author, a poet. I call him a street soldier because he was really somebody who was about changing the world that he lived in. And he was somebody that really talked about not only the great things that happened to him, his triumphs, but he also talked about his tribulations, his struggles. And so the first time that I interviewed him was right after he had gotten out of prison. And I really feel like his manager told me at the time that that was his first interview. And at the time I was working for NBC in DC, local news. And I remember it being, I hate to say it, but a hard sell, because in local news, it's like, okay, especially, it's Prodigy, NBC. They're like, well, how does this make sense to our community? So I really sold it. And they said, okay, you can do the interview for him and his new book. So great. Man, it was a tough interview. I hate to say it. It was a really tough interview. So I received the advanced copy of the book. The book, My Infamous Life, amazing. You haven't read it. It is not only entertaining, but it really links up a lot of stories about 90s hip hop. So it was really, cool in that way. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that story. Okay, I remember that. Okay, now that makes sense. But it was just written well, very entertaining. And during the interview, which made it a difficult interview, is as an interviewer, your job really is to allow the interviewee to shine. That's your job. It's not to hype yourself up. It's really to, allow them to get their talent out there. You know what I mean? And so in the interview, it was difficult because, I'm off camera, but I just noticed he wasn't really making good eye contact with the camera. He just wasn't being as engaging, as passionate. And, I'm just trying to ask the best leading questions that I can to try to, really just highlight who he is, really to get that on display easier. So it was tough. And so I remember the second time around, his manager, and this is someone I'm friends with, he said, yeah, he's got a new cookbook out, Commissary Kitchen. And so I asked him, straight up, I said, hey, how is he with interviewing? Like, what's happening? And he said to me, listen, he's amazing. He's got, since that, 100 easily interviews down, book tours down. I want you to check out this interview that he did with MIT. He was like, I'll send you the link. I'm going to tell you, if you haven't done so, you should Google this, YouTube, Prodigy MIT. And this interview was amazing. So when they first asked me, saying, oh, he's coming to town, you want to interview him, talk to him about the cookbook. Once I saw, my infamous cookbook, once I saw this interview, it changed everything for me. And at that time, I was asked to host his in-store at Howard University. And so, anytime it's an in-store, it's usually about the book. And in his case, he had the book, but he also had new music out. But I asked his team, I was like, I can't not talk to him about the prison system. And that's why I had him on my show, and it was how to help inmates transition from life in prison to life on the outside, and how to help them stay out, and just his insight, just what he shared was amazing, man. It was amazing. One, because he really talked about how he went into prison with a plan, how to make prison that time work for him. But then he talked about how he was aware that his situation was different, but he gave advice on how, even if you're in a different situation, maybe you can't go back to, a rap career. Maybe you don't have fans. But he talked about, what inmates could do to make their life better. And that's what I loved, because a lot of times you see people just kind of go through life, they don't talk about their struggle. They always kind of say, I'm out and this is what I have now, but not this is what I did to get here, you know? So, man, he will definitely be missed. I know that he struggled. He talked about it often in interviews, also in his autobiography, and as well as his cookbook. He talked about struggling with sickle cell anemia. And I know that he had said that anytime he was on tour, that was the hardest time for him because, you know, it's harder to eat healthily. And yeah, man. And I know that he was on tour, and so that's what they're pretty much speculating. He had been hospitalized, that probably it's related to sickle cell. But it was a tough loss, and I'm definitely gonna not say just for hip hop, but for the world. And so to the family, friends, and fans of Prodigy, I just wanted to just tell you, you are in my prayers. I'm praying for your comfort. And to Prodigy, I'm gonna say rest in paradise, man. Rest in paradise. And I cannot wait to see what this next journey is like for you. Because in life, he was definitely impactful and changed the world that he lived in. So it'll be amazing to see what kind of changes, how he will affect our world during this next transition of his life. So, yeah. So now let's get ready to talk about political pop. Before we do, I got to shout out the people in the Southwest, man. You guys are dealing with crazy heat. I mean, we're talking about heat that hasn't been recorded in decades. Like, it's so hot that they're like, we haven't seen this heat in decades. Also, planes in Phoenix have been grounded, haven't been able to take off because it's been so hot. I don't know if you guys heard about that. Yeah, they were saying the planes can't take off because they need a longer runway to combat the heat. That's crazy. That's crazy. And to think that Trump pulled us out of the Paris climate deal, you know, it's like, hey, is there global warming? So yeah, let's kick off our political pop. So political pop this week is sponsored by Quick Feet Soccer. Yeah, Quick Feet Soccer. Yeah, so and not only do they offer soccer camps, right? They also offer soccer clinics. They do residential camps and also birthday parties, private lessons. If you want to find out more about Quick Feet Soccer, log on to quickfeetsoccertraining.com. Tell Justin I said hi. And thank you so much for sponsoring Political Pop. Now, let's get into Political Pop because Barack Obama is mad. He is hot at this new healthcare deal, and I can't blame him. This new healthcare bill is crazy. The Republicans are saying this. They're saying, oh, yeah, it's going to offer coverage for a lot of people. Yeah, for a lot of people that are not old or poor. We're going to get into the details, but first, let me tell you what Barack Obama said. He said, it's a massive transfer of wealth from middle class and poor families to the richest people in America. He adds, it hands enormous tax cuts to the rich and to the drug and insurance industries paid for by cutting health care for everybody else. Now let's get into the nitty gritty. Here's what he's referring to. So when he talks about the tax cuts, here they are. It ends tax cuts by this. It increases tax on higher, I'm saying it wrong. Sorry about that. It ends the tax increase on higher earning people. That's what it does. Okay. Now this includes insurers, drug makers, and medical device manufacturers. So when you think about who needs a tax cut, is it those people? No, they make the most money. Insurers, drug makers, and medical device manufacturers. Yeah. Also, what it does is it cuts the Medicaid program for low-income people and lets states impose work requirements on Medicaid recipients. So if you're on Medicaid, they're saying you need a job. And I know my grandmother was on Medicaid. She couldn't have a job. She was injured. What? This also what it does is forbids states that haven't already expanded Medicaid to do so. Also changes Medicaid from an open-ended program, right? Meaning whatever you need, you can get is covered under Medicaid, to now a program that has fixed amounts of money annually. So what What? Fixed amounts annually. So you can be sick and need help, but only so much help. So let's get into a little bit more details. We're almost done here. It also allows states to get federal waivers, allowing insurers to charge older customers higher premiums than younger customers. Now, let's remember, under Obamacare, you could only charge older people more by a 3-to-1 ratio. But now, under this bill, you could do whatever you want. How is that fair? Also, states can get waivers exempting insurers from providing customers with required coverage of specified health services. Let's go back to Obamacare. Remember, if you had a pre-existing condition, you could still get coverage. The only way you couldn't get coverage was if you had a gap in your insurance coverage. That was the only way you couldn't get coverage. But this bill is like, hey, I can charge you. Yeah, man. This is making me think about when I was little. And this is a true story. My mom used to come home and tell my sister and I quite often, hey, don't get sick this month. We don't have insurance. And I remember as a kid, it seemed kind of funny because I'm like, how can I get sick on purpose? How can I injure myself on purpose? It's called an accident. But as I get older, that's really scary. And sadly, to think that many Americans could be having these types of conversations in their home. It's frightening. And that's your political pop. Now let's talk about our topic for today. Now I mentioned earlier about, the truth you can find out by watching your child. So let me tell you what happened to me this week and what I learned about myself. So my nanny comes to me and says, oh my goodness, Danella, KJ is amazing. And I said, well, what happened? And she says, well, we were at the park, and he's looking at the park and he's like, oh no, mess. So he starts picking up all of the trash and putting it in the trash can. Now, my first thought is like, do you have hand sanitizer with you? And I start thinking, I'm like, oh, it's in the baby bag. Wait, she doesn't take the baby bag. It has hand sanitizers and wipes. She took the stroller. There's no wipes there. Are there wipes there? This is all the thoughts that I'm thinking, right? And then I start thinking shortly after that, like, wow, am I that person? I am that person. And I'm going to take it a step further, man. I realized I've been doing a lot of introspective writing, and I realized that I really struggle between, my spirit and my surroundings. And I don't know if you're like me. I feel like a lot of people have this struggle, and that's that notion of your heart and the world that you live in, And so if you follow me on anything, I often talk about being the change in the world that you want to see. And that's something that I really believe and I try to do. I try to be that person in the world. I really wholeheartedly try to leave the world better than how I found it. But if I'm not helping, then am I doing that? And I start thinking about it because, if I'm with my son and there's trash, I might think, oh, we're in the suburbs. There's HOAs, homeowners associations. There's parks and planning. Somebody's going to come and get it. But that's not being the change that you want to see. Right? Right. So now, we're going to have to pick up the trash. And this also reminds me of one of my favorite songs, man. Buju Banton has this song, and he says, those who can afford to run will run. But what about those who can't? Him will have to stay. And I think about that because when we were younger, growing up in the hood, we moved and moved and moved, and we left and we left and we left, So my son is teaching me, Mom, no, we have to be the change that we want to see. I have 2 hands. He's not even 2, man. He's not even 2. And now I'm looking at myself like, what's wrong with me? How shallow is that? He can't get his hands dirty? He should get his hands dirty. He's a child. Toughen up his immune system. So the reason why I'm really sharing this today is I want to talk to the parents, because so often in life, we're busy and we think it's our job to teach our children, right? But if you just watch them, I mean, really watch them, they can show you the good, the bad, and the ugly of yourself. They can. And so what I want to encourage you to do, and I see this a lot. I'm driving in my car or running in the park, and I'll see parents at the playground, babysitters, nannies at the playground. And a lot of times they're on their phone and the kids are playing. It's no judgment. I'm just calling it how I see it. It's there. And it's easy because you're thinking, oh, my child is busy. There's friends. Let me just, return some emails, return some text messages. And I want to encourage you to put down your phone just for a minute. Take a break and connect to your child. Just watch them. Watch them, because they really have that ability to show you who you really are just by watching them. And for me, I had known this in relationships. To be honest, I had been a serial monogamist for years. So I was very clear about, we are mirrors for our partners, I was clear about that. And now I'm learning as a new mom, our children are windows for us. So I don't know if you're watching this today and your weekend's coming up and you're like, hey, I'm encouraging you this weekend, take a break, connect to your child. Or if you're watching this on a Monday or later in the week, please take a break for your child. I'm going to share one more story because, I got my hair did trying to be cool because it's hot. Try something different. And so I'm at the salon and I'm talking to my hairstylist, and she tells me a similar story about her daughter. Her daughter's double digits, 11. That's a big deal. I'm knocking on 2 next month, so not really in the thick of it. But her daughter's 11, and so she's picking her daughter up, and her daughter says, Mom, are you going to be on your phone? And she's like, because she says, the mom is like, she's on the phone. And the daughter says, because I want to talk to you. And she's like, I'll call you back, And she thinks about it, the mom says, yeah, every time I'm in the car, I do most of my talking on the phone. And I'm with her, man. I do my errands, I'm on the phone. And so now she says that she puts her phone down because that drive is the time that she can connect to her daughter, Because if you really think about it, when your child gets home, whether it's from school, daycare, summer camp, anybody's house, playing outside, when they see you, that's the start of their day. That's the start of their day. You are the center of their world and their universe. And it means the world to them to connect to you. And I know those of you that know it, that's cool, but think about how much you can learn, okay, by watching them. So that's what I'm going to encourage you to do this week. And thank you for joining me this week. And I'll see you next week.